So the B.R.I.C.S Summit has officially taken place. This is what I told you about last week. Did they say what we thought they were going to say? Did they make the points about the US dollar and crushing it that we thought they would? Yeah. Let's get into it.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rule?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live event. Thank you for joining. Renee Torgerson over on Facebook. Good evening to you, too. I do not have the Twitter feed or the X feed available to put on screen again. I don't know why. Everything else is working. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, all fully functional, but for some reason, X has just stopped working. So this was the case last week as well. Since I am a one-man show, I have to keep testing this on the fly. So my apologies to those on X because that is where my focus is. And on that note, thank you to everyone who did follow on X. I am trying to grow that platform just in case. I keep getting these notices from the other platforms that, this was fake. This was proven to be fake by our fact checkers. And I don't even post anything that they would look at. They don't show me what it is, but it's just a means that they utilize for hurting my distribution. So and those of you who follow know there's never false information here. I don't state facts that I'm not aware of. So that's that. So good evening to you, Renee. All right. So I talked to you guys last week about the B.R.I.C.S Summit that was coming up. For those that didn't see last week and don't know what B.R.I.C.S is, it's Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, China, and South Africa. There's an alliance. It's been an alliance for a long. It's been a while. I mean, it's like 16 years now since they've aligned. Their main purpose from the beginning was to sort of help take down the United States dollar. And when I say that, I mean in the early days, they were really just looking to release dependence on it because of the United States practices of sanctioning and things of that nature. Other nations don't like that, and I don't blame them. The whole sanction thing, from the other end's perspective, you can say what you want about the countries we've sanctioned and say, but these countries were doing this and they were doing that. That's all well and good. But when you're gonna, and they may deserve some sort of punishment. But if you have control of the global currency, there are certain responsibilities that come with that. And it's not just the countries that we sanction who look at this and say, this is a problem. Like, we've never sanctioned South Africa, but they find it to be a problem. Brazil, same thing. Why? Because they're looking at it and saying, well, if you could do this to them, then you can do this to us. And so what the point of the B.R.I.C.S Alliance was and is growing now, which is why it's significant now, because there were 36 nations that attended this summit. Now, they're not all members, but 20 of those nations had actually sent their heads of state actually showed up. So their President Biden, if you will, actually showed up, as opposed to just sending a diplomat or, a UN representative or something like that. And so what was talked about, and what I talked about last week, it's not as dramatic as what they were suggesting going into it, where I decided to go ahead and broadcast to keep an eye out for it, because if it was that dramatic, it would have been very significant. But I have been talking for years about China's purchasing of gold, B.R.I.C.S countries in general purchasing of gold, but in particular China, followed by Russia, have been purchasing like significantly noticeable amounts of gold. And so has So have other central banks. On a lesser case, the United States Fed, but other central banks have been purchased, but not on the level that they've been purchasing. And the idea is, as you see this build up, as you see these problems come, it's all starting to come full circle now and come together. And I can tell you, of the 36 countries that attended, every one of them is considering at some point joining on. Because the idea is they don't like the IMF, right? International Monetary Fund. They don't like the United States decision making when it comes to how the dollar should be regulated. Excuse me. I've seen seeds before and I got something going on there. But they don't like any of that. They have problems with it. They don't like being dependent. And frankly, our decision to set things up this way when we got off the gold standard was terrible in the first place. And there were many then who were telling people this is what's going to happen. Like only bad things come from this. And sure enough, that's what's coming from it. And now we're in a position, because we've abused that power over the course of decades, where we now have to sit here and look at the reality of most of the world's population. I mean, we're talking India. India's not in yet, but they were there in big form. Indonesia, right there. And India, Indonesia, and China alone have an enormous population combined. We're in the billions. And so way in the billions, like not like a billion, like each one is at or close or over a billion citizens. So, and then you factor in countries like Russia, Brazil, South Africa, like there's a lot of humanity involved in this breakaway from the US dollar. So nothing good is going to come to the US dollar because of it. But let me just give you an idea of some of the things that I mean here. So, of course, Xi Jinping was there in the flesh, right? Praising the profound friendship between themselves and Russia. This was all held in Russia, by the way. That's not a coincidence, right? The idea being to show the world, Russia is not alone. Our attempt to isolate them, as we called it, with these sanctions and whatnot, was a failure. It was an abject failure. It hurt our citizens terribly. Okay, hurt our citizens terribly. It hurt Europe terribly, and it was an epic fail. It did nothing to friggin' Russia. Nothing. I mean, a blip. We're talking about one of those. And B.R.I.C.S is a big reason why. All right. So, they've been preparing for this they've been preparing for the United States to pull some sanction crap with them for a long time. And they were pretty well prepared when we did it. We knew it was going to hurt our own citizens. We chose to do it anyway. It's just another horrifically bad blunder by the DOD. And I say the DOD, Department of Defense, because it's not Biden. We all know this man has not been running the country for 5 minutes throughout his presidency. This revelation everyone had that he just all of a sudden started showing signs of dementia during that debate are ridiculous. Anybody worth their shirt who's going to be honest with themselves knows this man was not in control of the government from day one. He was probably wearing diapers during the campaign in 2020. And that's just real talk. But Putin, here's a quote from him. We intend to further increase coordination in these are the terms you're going to hear, in all multilateral platforms to ensure global security and a just world order. So multilateral platforms, multipolar platforms, these are the types of terminology you're going to hear, because what they're calling for is somewhat of independence. They the exact opposite, let's say, if everyone understands what the euro accomplished, the exact opposite of that. So my friends across the pond in Britain understand what I mean well, right? Because they broke away from that mess on their own. But they want each country to have its own say in global currency and global power. So much so that during the conference, they're actually discussing in the trade of grain, okay? So we talk about oil a lot, but a lot of grain comes out of that region, okay? A lot. And they were talking, let me just see what I noted here. I don't see it in my notes, but anyway, they want to set up an exchange similar to current exchanges that are set up where the prices get set globally for grain, where, and this is, I believe, done in London and maybe one other country at the moment, but they want to set it up where the price gets set there, at least for what they're trading between their own members, that they set prices on. In other words, they're looking to break off this thing altogether. Companies, Wall Street, like, they don't want any part of it. They don't want any part of it. They want complete autonomy from the United States hegemony, and you know what? They'll get it to some degree. Now, the United States and the West, in particular the United States, though, who wins this election is what's going to determine where countries go. So 36 countries showed up with interest, right? The only ones that truly applied, I believe, were Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Iran, of course, who was there in full, in full attendance there. And there's a couple others, I think, that have actually applied. But you don't show up there unless you're interested. And I think what these countries are saying to themselves is, look, we don't know what's coming, right? But when you hear them talk, and I listened to India speak, I listened to a few of them, and they all seem to be on the general theme that world order may be changing. And of course, they're going to be saying that being at a B.R.I.C.S conference for the sake of diplomacy, right? But they're acknowledging the fact that they believe the world is changing. Now, they also know Donald Trump is running for election and is about to get in. And so, or it might be fixed again. Who knows what's going to happen? But they're looking to see what happens with the American election, probably more intently than we are, because it's going to decide how. And even Saudi Arabia, by the way, has shown interest and has been on the fence regarding this, which would bring the oil to that exchange as well, that they're envisioning. So it's not a good thing economically. Now, let's keep in mind, these nations do not all love the CCP. And trust me, if you think the CCP is not going to be running this, and the CCP is the dominant power in B.R.I.C.S. There's no doubt about that. And if you think they're not going to be running that show, you're crazy. So in the end, the CCP is going to be calling those shots. Russia is still a big player in there, but they're not China. Right? So it's important to understand that too, that Russia, they're a big player in this, but they're not China. Now, China needs them for certain things, and they need China for certain things, and they'll play nice. But the fact of the matter is, you've got these countries, 36 of them show up. They're listening. They know an election is coming. That election is going to determine the direction of the United States. And the fact of the matter is, the chance of a Trump presidency is very high right now. Right? You're not going to get an accurate poll anywhere. They're all bought and paid for. You're not getting there's no way on earth this is a neck and neck race. Only a fool believes that. All right? This man is on fire right now. He's packing stadiums. He's on fire. Ever since they tried to kill him twice, eyes have been opening like crazy as to what we're actually dealing with in the White House right now. And the fact that every time Kamala goes on an interview, I feel like Trump goes up a point. Like every time she opens her mouth outside of script, and frankly, even on script, her writers are no better. Like he gains a point every time. So they're seeing Trump could win, and if he does, they're going to ease off this B.R.I.C.S thing, because they may see there's change, there's a new world, whatever, but they're not stupid, and they know history, and they understand. And it's like I've been saying for a long time. A lot of people saying it's going to be a new world order, give me this nonsense about the 200 and whatever years that the average empire, runs for. Like, there's never been anything like the United States in world history. And one thing that people need to remember is that we're an experiment. The great American experiment in personal individual liberty has never been attempted. And we are learning things all along the way. We've added 17 amendments after the Bill of Rights, and there will be more. And two of those was a bring in and a takeout with prohibition, right? But but the fact is, we're adding amendments as we go. We're learning as we go, right? We had unbridled capitalism for the beginning, and then there were the titans, and then we realized, wow, okay, nobody can compete in steel, oil. So we were like, all right, you know what? They put in antitrust laws. Like, all right, we power forward, right? Like there are, obviously slavery. I don't want to overlook that, but I'm talking more in economics here, right? But we understood that when the Constitution was founded, slavery was a big to do. Like, we knew we left that unsettled, and it was not a small thing to leave unsettled, but it did rectify itself because it's the nature of free people to rectify those types of things. So we've seen dark days before, and we've come out of them. And we come out of them because of individual liberty. When the threat comes down to our actual individual liberty, that's when it becomes, I don't care about the slogan. I don't care what the politics are. I don't care about anything. If this guy's coming for my individual liberty, then he needs to go down. Right? And we can regroup ourselves pretty quickly. We did it in World War II, right? All of a sudden we changed from this nice, calm culture to, all right, the women are out making bullets, the men are all out at war, and everybody chipping in their own way, like the converting factories, doing what we had to do. Like we have the flexibility of freedom to be able to do whatever we want to do. So they know this. They know that the United States has been run horrifically. They know that the DOD has been a hot mess and our deep state has caused a lot of disruption in the world. They also know that we're the kind of nation that can turn that on a dime. And we can. And we will. We will. Not only through Article 5, but right now, just through the election. Just by the fact that Trump will be in there and be a major disruptor to deep state, there will be a laundry list of people who are on trial for all kinds of things, and treason will be some of them. Once they start digging, once you get an honest person heading the Homeland Defense and heading all those alphabet agencies, you will start to see the truth come out. And right now, Trump is once that bullet hit his ear, it was like, it's on. Like, the first thing that's going to happen, Kennedy files are coming out. Here it is. Do with them what you want. This is what they did. Right? Like it's going to be a field day. Area 51, here, look, there was nothing there. Or, look, we have an alien, right? Like, whatever the hell's going on there, it's going to be like, here you go. Just send them out. Send them to the New York Post. Send it all out. I want everybody to know what all these people have done. And then let them persecute them in the public, and then you take them into trial. And then you go ahead and you bring them in, and you start trying them, and you start knocking them down. And when these nations, these other almost brick nations, start seeing that kind of stuff happening, not only are they going to be applauding, unfortunately our enemies will applaud as well, because they'll think it's some sort of disarray, but they won't applaud long when they realize they're losing their alliances now because everyone's realizing the United States is about to flex. And like, once that happens, all the gold in the world is not going to make people want to follow China. Nobody wants to tie their economics to a totalitarian regime. Nobody. It's not like it's lost on these world leaders the types of atrocities that the CCP commits. They're not going to have their entire nation's currency tied to that. It's bad enough to have it tied to the U.S. dollar, but you tie it to the yuan, and you're just over. You're just asking for it. So it's not doomed, right? But it is going to hurt before it gets better. Understand this. And this is why I brought this up, because I don't hear anybody talking about this stuff. I don't hear anybody talking about it back when I was talking about Xi Jinping buying up all this gold. I mean, it was like this big story. Well, it was to me, right? The story breaks that there's this mystery gold purchaser. I believe it was Q3 in 2023. This mystery gold purchaser, he's out there buying. They're out there buying up all this gold. Nobody knew who it was until eventually they were able to link it back to the CCP, who then claimed, well, they didn't buy as much as we're reporting they did. Yes, they did. And the fact is they've been doing it, right? So. And why was that relevant then? Because it's telling you it's telling you their hand, right? You know where they're going with this. There's only one reason to do that. And that's number one, yes, to protect yourself from U.S. sanction, right? But we wouldn't, right now, with the exception of Trump, no politician would sanction China. None. Like, what's required to do this? What's required? And if they do, and by the way, on top of buying gold, they have been slowly, and they discussed this at this summit as well, the method of slowly selling off the U.S. dollars that they own. So they're not trying to do it as shock and awe because that hurts them too. So they're trying to slowly just get rid of their U.S. assets without it doing any damage to themselves. Like, all of these things are happening, and we know exactly what the problem is. Well, that's not even that. We know what they're trying to accomplish, right? And what they're trying to accomplish is taking dependence away from the U.S. dollar. That's what they're trying to accomplish. And they'll do it. If we get a Kamala, because Kamala, let's face it, right? That's DOD. Like, we get Kamala in there, we got a deep state administration for another 4 years. Maybe another 8, because in order for her to get in, it's going to have to be rigged. Now, I personally think it's way too big to rig. There's just no support for this woman, except for the diehards, right? But there aren't that many diehards. It just looks like there are because they're all on TV and they count bots on the internet. But there aren't enough dead people out there to be able to pull this off. That's my opinion, right? So I don't see that happening. But you get Trump in there, there's going to be some earth-shattering stuff coming out of our own government, and we're going to have to know how to behave when this information starts coming out, because people are going to get angry, and when they get angry, people do stupid things, and we need to keep our calm and make sure we put these folks through the proper channels of justice, etc., and then focus on the dollar. And what better way, right? What better way to focus on the dollar than passing a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution, eliminating income taxes Trump has already said he wants to do, right? Well, we can do that. He can't do that, but we can. And if he would just support that, then it would be that much easier to get done, right? It would be that much easier to get done. You know what was notably not spoken about, though, at this summit? Climate change. Not a freaking word. So somehow, all of these countries have absolutely no fear that the world's going to end in 12 years. Like, they have no fear. That's wild. That's wild. It's almost like they don't have any scientists, right? The only scientists must be in the NATO countries, I guess. That must be it. Not a freaking peep about climate change. So and why? Because China doesn't care about climate change. They just don't care, right? Russia doesn't care. They don't care. Why? Because it's not a threat to humanity. That's why. And it's not worth destroying your population mentally, economically, etc., health-wise. It's not worth doing to people. Because it's not that it's not real, the climate is changing. It's just not, number one, it's not caused by humanity, or at least if it is, they have zero evidence of that. And number two, even if it wasn't, or even if it is caused by humanity, there's nothing that can be done. This is right here, what this group is telling you is that more than half the world's population represented in country form are not taking it seriously. That's what that's telling you, is that they're not taking it seriously. So if they're not, why the hell are we? Why do people in California get $1,000 electric bills because they decided to get a pool? It's why? Because there's cap and trade. That's why. Because it's cap and trade. And it's nonsense. Just pure nonsense. Let me check 1 second. I just want to check the... All right. I was just checking Twitter just to make sure. The following is still pretty small there, so the viewership is not that great. But I do want to make sure I keep an eye on that to respond to anybody who's commenting on X, because right now, at least for the moment, they're the only platform not working. So I want to make sure that you have that opportunity. But you know what, though? Like I skip back on the point that, like, a balanced budget amendment and the elimination of income tax would strengthen the dollar immensely. This is if it's still salvageable, right? Because if they do go on an aggressive binge right after Trump takes office, it may be too late to stop it. It just may be too late. And so if that's the case, it's going to hurt a lot before it gets any better. Martin Tunk, Salisbury, over on Facebook. There isn't any climate change. It's bull. It's to tax people and nothing else. I would agree with you, well, except for one thing. They don't care about taxing people. Like that's one of the things. Like they can make up a tax on anything, but because the Supreme Court has just given the freaking government like carte blanche, anytime an issue comes up with tax, they're pretty much like, sure, use it to punish people, use it to help people, do whatever you want. But the reality is, in modern monetary theory, which is how this government and our economy and our finance has been operating since we got off the gold standard, the government can print whatever it needs. It can just print it. It doesn't need to. The obvious question when you first learn this is, why am I being taxed then, if they can just print what they need? And the answer is to control inflation. That's it. So that they can keep spending, they want to control your spending, which is disgusting, sick, but incredibly true. So when they print too much, as they have now, right, and inflation starts to skyrocket, well, they could just print more still, anything they want. So when you see, your Republican people, and I say the Republicans because they're the ones who are supposed to be on your side. But again, two wings, same bird, all the same people. When you see 100 Republicans go ahead and vote for some psycho omnibus bill, well, that's and all that money gets pissed away, right? They don't care. They don't feel like they need to tax more for that because they can just print more, right? What they do feel, and they don't do personally, but what happens is that you get taxed more, and that your tax is going to be through inflation, right? So they're not actually taxing, right, like climate change initiative. They just keep spending and tax you through inflation because something has to happen in order to get inflation under control. And so the money that you no longer have, right? The now it's down to, I think, a penny on the dollar's worth about a penny to where it was at the gold standard. But all that money now is just friggin', that's your tax. And then they'll raise interest rates to make sure you can't borrow any money when you're broke. This is how, and all that so that they can continue to spend and continue to print and continue to promise people utopia and tell people, and there are plenty of Republicans on these government programs too. And all of this stuff, all of these safety nets and gaps and whatever else, the exaggeration of them, I should say, all of that is just to keep you in control. All of it. It's disgusting. Give me 1 second, folks. My dog is sitting here going crazy. He just heard me say the word dog and is like trying to get out of this room as he snuck in here while I started the broadcast. So he has to be let out. Give me 1 second. I can open the door. All right. We're back. So, but anyway, this is all of this madness with economics. Now, on top of it all, and we've said, and I just went on that rant about modern monetary theory. The fact of the matter is, though, we went on this whole fiat currency extravaganza and made ourselves vulnerable to what's going on in this B.R.I.C.S conference. And that's the reality of it. These nations get together. If they've got a decently backed currency, a decently gold-backed currency, even if it's not, dollar for dollar with gold, if they have enough gold currency to back it up and give it worth and value, and the United States dollar starts tanking, and nobody even knows what the hell is in Fort Knox, right? So if those two things happen, the world will start doing business in their currency or in their currencies, right? So and what Russia's proposing is not that the ruble become the global standard. They're proposing, like, look, if you got rubles, you could buy grain in rubles. If you want to buy oil, you could buy it in in yuan. You can buy it in I don't even know Brazil's currency, but you could buy it in these different currencies, and it's fine. We'll do exchanges, and we'll do it the way it was done before the United States made the ridiculous decision to get off the gold standard. Right, and that alone just makes us just another currency, and with a reeling economy. And the government spending at the rate that they spend, there's no hope. And really, it comes down to our government spending at the rate that they spend. So, like I said, it's going to hurt before it gets better. And frankly, the balanced budget amendment, people should understand this. Like I want people to understand. We call this convention and we get a balanced budget amendment. It's not going to be like painless. Like, we've allowed this madness to go on for freaking decades on end. It's going to hurt a little before it gets better. Now, in the end, it's going to get a lot better. All right? And the threat of this happening again will be greatly reduced. But to get to that point, to get the government, like, programs are going to have to get, like, they can't afford. All these regulatory agencies, the majority of them are going to get shut down, which is fine with me. We don't need them. I never elected them. I don't need them. All right. Some may survive. FDA may survive. It'll probably be torn down and rebuilt, but some form of regulatory stuff on mass-produced food and stuff that will probably exist. I think. If it doesn't, I'm okay. All right. And for the drug piece, like, just stop taking them. All they do is kill people anyway. But I'm sure there will be something in place for that. But there will be huge cuts to the federal government, which is how it should be, so that they can get back to the business of what they were constitutionally set to do. And it's nothing. Like, when you just take away everything the federal government has its tentacles in right now, and you try and look at, all right, if we just took away everything that's not in accordance with the 10th Amendment, took away everything that's not clearly defined in the Constitution, dude, you wouldn't need regulatory agencies because the states would just be handling their business, right? Like, the idea, I heard one of these politicians say, well, we need these regulatory agencies because there's just too much to do. And it's like, there's only too much to do because the Supreme Court has given you these ridiculous freaking powers to just stick your tentacles everywhere, which is completely unconstitutional. But because there's no check on the Supreme Court except us, we're the ones that have to step up the game. And that's where this comes in. Right? If people look at the inflation and the printing money and this whole system, and they think it's just too big an issue to wrap your head around, but it's not. All of these problems, all right, and they won't all get addressed in the current calling of a convention. They won't all get addressed. There will be issues out there that will still need to be taken on, okay? And I'm trying to... There we go. So these are the three topics that are on for the current calling of a convention. 19 states are already on board. Term limits, fiscal restraints, amendments on government overreach. Fiscal restraints is the one I'm focused on here. Okay? So repealing the 16th Amendment, 100% doable under that topic. 100% doable. 16th Amendment, for those that don't know, was income tax. It was in the one of the blackest years, one of the darkest years in American constitutional history, all right, where two amendments were passed, one of which was the 16th Amendment under with the worst president in the history of the U.S. by far presiding in Woodrow Wilson. All right, in 1 year, they took the Senate's power away to appoint the state legislature's power away to appoint senators. They added in an income tax, and at the dead of night on December 23rd, in 1913, they went ahead and created the Fed. Almost everything I'm talking about today could be thrown into Woodrow Wilson's agenda, that dark agenda, which what kind of climate we were in to get people to vote for such things. But here we are. And by the way, that 17th Amendment we could undo under the government overreach. I believe there might be some debate on that. Doesn't matter if getting something through is going to be so difficult. Like term limits, we'll get through. Right? Fiscal restraints, we'll get a balanced budget through because almost every state has a balanced budget policy already because they can't print money. So getting that through would not be ridiculous. Repealing the income tax, 100% possible if Donald Trump really was serious and really wants to really wants to lead that charge. If he wants to lead that charge, we only need 15 more states. We need 2/3 of the states to call the convention. We need 3/4 to ratify any amendments. Each state gets one vote. So it's not like, oh, your population's just Rhode Island and California get the same say. Why? Because every state is sovereign. But these things can be done. They're big things and they can be done, but they have to be done by us directly. And right now, it has been hard enough just getting people to understand how this works without having to friggin', with all the fear mongers out there. Oh, they're going to rewrite the whole Constitution. This is going to be crazy. And the Soros groups showing up at all these events, at all of these debates, the Women's League for whatever, I forget what they were, the Women's League of Labor or something, Soros group. Right? And then on top of that, you got B.R.I.C.S, who's supposed to be a conservative group, but is really just freaking loopy, who spent the beginning of their whole friggin' existence, they spent the whole beginning of it trying to get a convention called for what they called the Liberty Amendments. And then all of a sudden, they forgot about that and are on this crusade to dumb people down to the Constitution under the banner that they're trying to educate people on the Constitution. I'm done with those doo-doo-doos. I'm done with them. They had one coconut out there. What's his name? Robert Brown. $10,000 challenge for anyone who could tell me the founders didn't run away with the first. Give me a quote from the founders that they didn't run away. It wasn't a runaway convention of the original Constitutional Convention. Someone makes a whole channel just to collect that $10,000 and Robert Brown goes dark. And it's called All Things Article 5 on YouTube if you want to check that out. It's actually a really cool channel. I don't know if he's still at it, but he went on and did it just to go ahead and get that 10 grand, or at least make the mockery of it. Like don't throw out these things for money if you can't put your money where your mouth is. But all these fear tactics are out there, and I went through this too when I first signed on. I was like looking at it, and I'm seeing all these fear tactics, and the fear stuff they tell you is Soros is going to come in and take it over, and it's like that's impossible. Like there are certain things in this world that are impossible, and that's one of them. Okay, no Soros group can take it over. The worst thing that would happen is that we would not get the amendments that we want. That they would just not get ratified. That's the worst thing that can happen. In order for any proposal to get through, and some of these delegates, so the states will choose delegates to go, in similar fashion to the Constitutional Convention, only this one is under the Constitution and it's a convention for proposing amendments. But in similar fashion, the states would choose delegates, each one can choose as many as they want, and they would go debate under the guidelines of these topics. They would debate, the language and things like that. And it's a simple majority vote to get it to go to proposals. They would need 26 states to buy in to get it sent back to the legislatures to see if you could get ratified. But once it gets back to the legislatures, you need 3/4. Let's just wrap your head around this, okay? 3/4 of the states. So 13 states is all it takes to knock down anything. I can name like 7 or 8 doo-doo states right off the top of my head, right? So then you got to get into the minutia of the language and everything else. And, and frankly, it doesn't take the state. It only takes one chamber. So there are 99 chambers in this country, state chambers. And this Nebraska only has one. So everybody else has a Senate and a House, though. It only takes a 2 or 3 man committee to not, one committee in that chamber can shut the whole 13 of them it will take, right? Would shut the whole thing down. So, yeah, not an easy bar. right? Antonin Scalia was like, it should be hard, but it shouldn't be that hard. But like, it's hard, and so nothing's getting through that doesn't have immense agreement. Nothing. What's beautiful, though, is that all three of these topics have agreement. And after this election, I feel like there's going to be even more agreement. Like, I feel like there are a lot of Democrats right now who are quietly making their way, inching their way over, a little across the center and onto the right. They're not going to be swinging off the end pole of the right, but they're on there. They're on that side because there's sanity there. There's no sanity on the other side. There's none. You watch a Kamala interview, if you walk away from that thinking that was a great speech, then you're the problem. And unfortunately, the way our education system is, especially higher education, there are a lot of these doot-de-doos walking around thinking that those were great. There are people out there from these college kids who think the Biden speech or the Biden debate was brilliant. They exist. These people exist. But anyway, folks, if there's ever, I want to throw this out. I'm going to get off soon because I do have a lot to do right now, but I wanted to get on today and cover, for those of you who did not take the time to read up on the B.R.I.C.S Summit, I wanted to make sure I got that out there. Of course, I got to throw in my little bit about Article 5 in case you don't know. If you ever need information about Article 5, some of the resources you could go to, Convention Estates Project. All right, go to conventionestates.com. You can sign a petition there. There's a whole there, and they'll send a letter from you to your local representatives to let them know that you're in support, which is an easy way to pop off a letter, right? But then you get into this Cause University. They give you a whole slew of videos and all these things that you can watch and kind of. And then go and listen to the other side, right? Listen to the coconuts and doot-de-doos who are they almost got me, those guys, until I started reading Federalist Papers and things like that, and I realized how much BS it was. But go through that experience. It's worth it. It locks you in. And it gives you more rebuttal material when they start hitting you with that stuff. Because I am like indestructible now against these people. They used to come on in the early days and like give me jazz in the comments, and I would post their comments and jazz right back and slap them over the head with some quotes and some articles or whatever, like, Federalist Papers references, etc. And that's it. They just stopped coming. But in the end, I want you to be that way too, because we need to make civics great again. The founders gave us, and this is available, by the way, at thepatriotthinktank.com. But the founders gave us Article 5 for a reason. George Mason, made the comment. It was 2 days before the convention. They took that clause out of Article 5, and I believe it was Madison who was making the case that the Constitution already takes care of this. And he was like, and Mason was I'm putting this in my terms, right? But Mason was like, really? So what you're saying is we're supposed to trust that a tyrannical government that has too much power and is going for more is going to propose amendments in order to take that power away. And then they went ahead and put it back in 9 com, I believe it is. It's a no debate, right? Latin for no debate. So it's there for a reason. And our Bill of Rights exists because of the threat of convention. Because they were going to start another convention over the Bill of Rights. And thank God that threat came. Because what can you imagine the Constitution without the Bill of Rights? Can you imagine no First Amendment, no Second Amendment? Right? It's important. It's important, and it was designed for the legislators that we are closest to, which is our state legislatures in our districts. It was designed for them to have the pressure put on them, not the President of the United States. And it's important that everybody understand it. Civics matter. They matter. And even though they don't teach it, it's important that you understand it, and it's important that your kids understand it, because even if, there are so few people left in even Gen X who fully understand civics, which means there are that many more kids who are going to lose it. Which, by the way, is also by design. Right? All right. So now I feel like I'm getting to a point of ranting, but I knew that I wanted to talk a little bit about Article 5 today as well. So I hope you guys go and grab some articles and take a look at that B.R.I.C.S Summit. There's definitely some interesting video listening to these world leaders. Maybe I'm too wonky, and that's not exciting to you, but but I like to hear it because when I hear it, it gives me an idea. Even though I know a lot of it is show, it gives me an idea of what these nations are thinking and how serious they are, right? Like just the fact that India showed up, right? And that so many countries showed up. Like stuff like that. Like that's significant, right? Because it means now there's like they didn't show up in the past. They showed up now though, right? So because now they're seriously considering it because they realize that the United States, if left to its own device and Trump does not get in office, like there's one way, there's two paths that the tracks that go. And one set of tracks goes right off a cliff, the other one goes on to rebuild prosperity. And they need to see which one we're getting on. So show up to vote. Make sure you're out there. Make sure, I don't know if you already sent your stuff in, but make sure I'm going down myself, do it. And what was good news is in a lot of these states, it looks like more Republicans were voting early than Democrats, which was interesting because if it comes down to that, and then it's showtime on the day, you know who's showing up in force there, right? We don't have to worry about who's going to show up in force on the day. So, all right, I'm out of here, folks. Until next week. Again, any episode, anybody has a question about Article 5, bring them on. I will stop whatever I'm saying to make sure that I highlight the question and then go ahead and I'll have the whole exchange back and forth just to make sure that person gets the resources that they need. All right? All right, folks, I'm out.
And like that, he's gone.
All right, maybe I'm not gone. Something happened here, and I stayed. And now, B.R.I.C.S, if everyone knows the reference, had no idea. He's like, wait a minute, I just said you're gone, but here you are. Oh, I'm going to get it right, folks. I'm going to get it right. All right, now I'm going to get it right.